welcome to this. Not the video I'm planning on doing. I know I haven't done a video in about 2 weeks, but the reason for that is a couple things. Life kind of got in the way, and also just me doing other things, mainly reading. Not that any of you care about that, but usually when I start reading books, I have a bad habit of I'll read a book and then I have to read another book, and it kind of consumes me in a way. So that's where I have been. But not that anybody gives two damns about that, because if you're watching the video, I probably have put something in the title to let you know what the video is going to be about. Yes, this is a response to what was I even going to say? I don't know. To SPINNERNET. Not a drama response per se, but it might turn into a drama at some point. Don't know if he'll see this. Don't know if he'll watch it. I don't know if I'm going to even be allowed to do this as a video response to him. But if someone would be kind enough just to let him know that I did a video response, not that he'll probably care, not that he'll probably watch it, but of course he did a video basically bashing indie wrestling, why he doesn't like it, indie wrestling fans, this, that, and the other, and I just want to talk about some of the points that he brought up. Now, the first thing that he brought up was kind of weird, in that he brought up why he was doing this video. And I'm going to call a little bullshit on this, because not that I have any evidence, not that I know, but it does seem kind of weird that he came on here and said that he was doing this video, and he'd been wanting to do this video for years, and this, that, and the other. And of course, LV just did a video about this. I know Big Rat did a video similar to this sort of thing, and I'm sure if both of them did, there's lots of other people that I'm not even aware of that probably did as well. So, and he had said that there had been people that had done videos kind of similar to this. So it kind of just made me kind of go, that's kind of strange. And then I remembered, oh, you know what? I don't think he's seen Death Before Dishonor or done a review of Death Before Dishonor. And I know Gemini, of all people, and not to bash Gemini by saying this, but he did a review. He ordered it. He watched it. He loved it. I know he did a review of it. Just a very quick review. And he also did a video response to SPINNERNET as well, which was very good. I would recommend everyone seeing it, because I think he brought up a lot of good points, particularly somebody that is not necessarily a Ring of Honor fan, but did a very good job of just kind of explaining some of the things I'm going to explain. I'm just going to go a little bit more in depth into it. But I have to question why he did the video if it wasn't more of, since as far as I know, he hasn't talked about Death Before Dishonor. If he's seen it, as far as I know, he hasn't seen it. The only comment that I saw about Ring of Honor pay-per-views was that he saw one back in 2007. Maybe he's seen it, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'll freely admit that if I'm wrong. But I'm curious if he didn't see it, and then if he's getting email after email after email of people asking him to review the show, and he's just not willing to review the show. And so if he just threw a little hissy fit and decided he was going to go on and just start bashing indie wrestling and Ring of Honor just on a whole. So that's the first thing I would bring up myself. But other than that, so I think that's the first question I would pose to Mr. SPINNERNET was that why you did the video? Is there another reason other than you just hating on fanboys, as you put it? And let's talk about the fanboy statement, because Jim and I talked about fanboys, and he talked about that we're all fanboys, except, SPINNERNET's not much younger than me, and I will freely admit I'm a geek. I will freely admit that I've been in geek sectors, and so to me, and being an old-time geek, I'm not that I'm an old-time geek, but I am older than I am in geek terms. I guess I am. Fanboy to me is something else. Fanboy to me is a bad term. Fanboy to me means that you're nothing more than a lemming, such as a comic book fanboy, in which you're willing to follow whichever comic book you follow and you champion to the ends of the earth and over the cliff and to death itself, defending it. So to me, that is what it means. So to me, it's not a very good term. It's not a term that is that. And he was throwing it around pretty loosely. So I think that was what he was trying to put on that, or trying to say, is that there's a lot of us that are just, we're just going to champion indie wrestling, and we're going to talk about indie wrestling, and that's all we're going to do, and this, that, and the other. So, I would bring up the fact that he was using fanboy in a derogatory term. So, and there is that. But let's talk about why he said he did this video. He said that indie fans get a free pass on the sites that he goes to here on YouTube, and I'm curious what the hell he's been watching. Watch any video I do on Ring of Honor, on Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, on Japanese wrestling, on anything that is not WWE TNA. You always get people, why are you talking about this? Why are you talking about this? Why are you talking about this? You go to 411. You look at whenever they do indie reviews or talk about indie wrestling. There's always people bitching and complaining that they're talking about indie wrestling and they're not talking about WWE and they're not talking about TNA and they're not talking about this, that, or the other, but they're talking about this and they don't want to talk about this. So I don't know where you go. There's a lot of message boards that even the diehard, like the most diehard fans, you'll see, diehard indie fans get kind of ripped for following indie wrestling and not following mainstream wrestling. So I don't know exactly where you get off that they get a free pass on things, because I definitely don't see that. I'm not saying that they get bashed. I definitely don't see them getting a free pass. So that's the first thing. The second thing is he talked about the fact that back in the 90s that he watched indie wrestling or even Japanese wrestling, and I'm curious exactly what it was that he watched in the 90s, because he didn't tell us. He just said that he watched indie wrestling in the 90s. He brought up ECW, and I'll bring up ECW again because it's kind of important, but he brought up the ECW, and that was the only one he really brought up throughout the whole video, and I'm curious, did he watch All Japan? Did he watch New Japan? Did he watch FMW, War from Japan? Did he watch any of those Japanese promotions? Did he just watch ECW? Did he watch Memphis? Did he watch Smoky Mountain Wrestling? Did he watch CZW when it first began? Did he watch IWA Mid-South when it first started? I'm just kind of curious what it was when he says indie wrestling, because when he said indie wrestling, he was talking about basically anything that wasn't mainstream wrestling. And I'm curious exactly what did he follow in the 90s, because as far as I know, we've never heard him talk about anything other than ECW. And ECW definitely wasn't the only thing in the 90s. It was one of the few things that was in the 90s. You had Memphis, you had Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which was around during the early 90s. You had CZW during the late 90s when it was first starting, and you had IWA Mid-South during the late 90s when it was first starting. So you had, those were the only indies I can think of, unless he was talking about Japanese wrestling. And then my question still is, why didn't he tell us what they are? If he truly watched this stuff, then tell us what you watched. Tell us what it was, don't just say, I watched it, because anyone can say, I watched it. Tell us what you watched. That would be one thing. Next question, and this is probably should be in the first question, is what is mainstream wrestling? That's particularly in today's day and age. The internet has changed wrestling as much as maybe any form of entertainment, with the exception of maybe music. And because of the internet, because of downloading all this, it has totally changed the music business. Instead of, if you go to look at concerts used to be, you went on concert to promote the album or the CD, and now it's, you produce the CD so that people will come and, maybe they'll download it, maybe they won't pay for it, but they'll definitely come and see your show, and they'll definitely come to the concerts, and the concerts is where you make the money. So it has changed that business. It's changed, the wrestling business as well, because, you've got, just from the fact that more fans know what's going on, it's harder to keep fans kind of in the dark for what's going on. You've also got the pirating aspect of it. You've got all of that aspect of it, and it is much easier today to find indie wrestling than it was in the 90s. When I first got on the internet, it took me a long time to even find out about Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I knew what ECW was because everyone talked about ECW. Everyone talked about, the Japanese promotions, but people had been tape trading for so long that the Japanese promotions were pretty well known. So it's not like, and as time has gone on, the tape trading, the pretty much everybody knows or has heard just about every major, semi-major promotion, all the big indies most people have heard of, and all of those types of things. So what is mainstream wrestling? I mean, that's a very, I think that's, is it a promotion that simply has a TV deal? Is it a promotion that has is it a promotion that, is on pay-per-view? Because you have a promotion that doesn't do live pay-per-views, but now you got two promotions, I guess, that don't do live pay-per-views, but they're on pay-per-view. I mean, what is mainstream wrestling? I think we need to ask that. If you were to ask me, I would say, I guess it would be a promotion that had the ability for widespread audience, for a big audience on a national level, on television. I guess would be what I would say it is. But I think we need to ask that because, wrestling is changing so much, and this is one of the reasons why when I first started on here, I started talking about Ring of Honor, was because I can remember the 90s, and you went on the internet, and it was nothing but, ECW, ECW, ECW. Dave Meltzer got ripped for a long time in the 90s because a lot of people felt he was overly hard and didn't give ECW the credit it deserved, and this, that, and the other. So, I mean, people forget that sort of thing. So, what is mainstream wrestling? He then brought up the fact that, that we always hear that it's just too expensive. It's just too expensive to follow indie wrestling. And I always call bullshit on this because it is complete bullshit. For one thing, you look at Death Before Dishonor that just happened with Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor, this is a good example with Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor has a TV show. It's a TV show that anyone that's watching this video, anyone that's on YouTube can easily find because it's on a YouTube channel. And it gets uploaded on a YouTube channel. You can watch the entire thing. And the thing is, you could watch all of that. Now that's not for mainstream fans. Don't get me wrong. That's not for mainstream fans, but that's for die-hard wrestling fans, the wrestling fans that are on here. Can easily see that, can easily follow it, and then could have watched the pay-per-view and known what was going on. None of the CDs, none of the DVD releases really, did anything different than the TV show did. They added some stuff to it. They made, the Generico-Steen feud that much better, but there was nothing really on the DVDs that you had to see to not understand what to see the pay-per-view, or even understand what was going on in the pay-per-view. There was none of that. And also, and this is one thing that people don't bring up, usually the announcers, and even though the announcers aren't the best, usually they do explain what the angle is, what the feud is, what these guys are wrestling about, or are they just having a match for a contender, for a future title shot? Is this just to see who the better man is? Is there some sort of backstory before the match? Usually the announcers explain that. So, I don't get into this. You have to follow every DVD. On top of that, let's say you just bought one WWE pay-per-view a year, with taxes. In most places, that one with taxes, mind you, I'm adding the taxes because if you've ever ordered a pay-per-view and never looked at the bill, you see that it's not necessarily $59 or $49 or $39 that the taxes wind up making it, $60, $70, depending on the price of the pay-per-view. For that $60, and I'll just say 60 or even 50, but let's just say 60 because 60 is a good number. Let's say you just bought one. Let's say you spent $60 on that one pay-per-view. You could buy to ROH, and when now they do you buy 3, you get 2. Well, 3 Ring of Honor DVDs equals $60. If you add the shipping, it ends up being $70. You get 5 DVDs. For 5 DVDs, keep this in mind, 5 DVDs, you can probably get 5 shows that are better than, anything WWE or TNA put on that year. That's why so many of us review them, so you know what shows to do. The reason why people review these shows is because there are a lot of shows. And people don't want to get a bad show. People don't want to get a show that they think is a waste of money. So myself, others, we do reviews of those shows. I'll freely admit I probably don't do as many reviews as I should because, you know, I have 10,000 subscribers now. Well, I have just over 10,000 subscribers, and I don't always do the first reviews. I'm not the person that does the first Ring of Honor reviews. You have Big Rat and Honor Hammer and Sanders Robin and many others. And so by the time that I'll get a DVD, there's usually there's been 5 or 6 reviews of a show, and I don't feel the need, and this is a mistake on my part, I don't feel the need to do a review of it. And I forget that I have more subscribers. I'm not saying this to hype myself. I'm just saying the truth. I have more subscribers than all of these guys combined, and that I probably should do more reviews. But in my head, I'm like, oh man, there's been enough reviews of those, and I don't think that, well, you know, I can probably get in one video as many views as they're getting maybe combined. So sometimes I forget that. So, but that's why we do these reviews. It's not just to talk about the product. It's to let people know, this is the DVD you should get. This is the DVD that you might want to get. This is a good DVD to get. And so you don't have to buy every show. The only promotion I can think of that you have to buy every show would probably be Chikara. And that would be the only one. And and even then, I think that the current storyline you could probably follow pretty easily. Look at PWG. PWG, you know, might put out 8 DVDs this year, and of those 8, and probably, I mean, a good number of them will probably be really good because they do bring in very good talent. You look at Dragon Gate. You know, you're probably talking 4 DVDs a year, so you know it's not that big of an investment. And the other thing that just boggles my mind is he's talking about the fact that, oh, you know, and some of these people, they don't even have enough money for you know, WWE and TNA. Well, guess what? If you don't have enough money for WWE or TNA, there are other means. And yes, maybe you need to go, maybe you have to be, you know, search for them. But there's other means to get these shows. I don't approve these means, particularly for indie shows, because indie companies rely so much on that DVD money. But there's other means to follow these companies. So don't pretend like, you know, well, there's no other way unless you buy the DVDs, because that's not entirely true. So there you go. To continue. And this goes to just, because I always wonder this. Where did this, if you don't watch indie wrestling, you're not a real fan crap start? I've never heard anyone say that. I've heard people say if you're not willing to at least try indie wrestling, then maybe you're not a wrestling fan. Because if you're a wrestling fan, then you should at least want to try to see something other than WWE and TNA. I would think. Now maybe it wasn't work. Maybe you don't like it. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you need the production values of WWE to enjoy a wrestling show, and if that's fine, more power to you. And I would say that there's stuff out there from Japan that has just as good of quality production-wise as WWE and TNA, as well, by the way. But if that's what you need, that's what you need, and I understand that. But it's the people that I get upset with, or the people that are not even willing to try to talk about Ring of Honor, or try to watch an indie wrestling show. That bothers me. So I don't, and I know I've seen people maybe comment on that, but I haven't seen anyone in a video ever say that. So, I'm just kind of curious where that came from. And the other point is if you like in-ring product, if you like actually if you actually like the in-ring product, and you're not caught up in the storylines and the pomp and the circumstances and the production values and all of these things, if you just want good in-ring wrestling, then indie wrestling usually gives you a better product than TNA or WWE. They're not going to match the production values. There's no doubt about that. Which I find very funny that, so many people bitch about production values, yet they're so quick to praise and laud, ECW. And ECW has shit production values. I've never understood that. Never in my life have I ever stood that. Then he talked about how, if you criticize indie wrestling, the indie fanboys come down and swoop upon you and start, killing you or wanting to crucify you. The only time I've ever seen that happen is similar to, you know, Bill and Doug, when Bill and Doug didn't know what they were talking about, or when other people have come on here and either don't know what they're talking about or try to act like they know what they're talking about because they've seen someone else say something about an indie wrestler or somebody else, and they're trying to sound smart and they don't know how to back it up. But and you can tell they've never actually watched the product or seen the wrestler. Then, you know, then people bash the hell out of them, because as they should, because if you haven't seen it, how can you judge it? So, there you go. Let's see. Also, he said that, you know, indie wrestling wasn't for everybody and wasn't for a mainstream audience. And this I have a very big problem with, because I have 3 examples of this just not being true. And a lot of his video was about this, was about him saying that there was no way you could tell him that, you know, that a mainstream audience would not like indie wrestling. That it's just not going to happen. And I agree, not everyone is going to like it, because not everyone likes the same things. But I think that as far as indie wrestling goes, I think that if you take the mainstream audience and you let them, and you expose them to indie wrestling, I think a majority of fans would find something from ROH, Dragon Gate, Chikara, and PWG, just those 4 that they liked, and even CZW. I would throw in there now, because they're showing that they're maybe getting a little better, and saying, hey, maybe there's something here that you would like. Maybe there's something that if the other 2 promotions aren't giving you, maybe this is something you would like. And so I do think that is a possibility. Would they ever be as big as, you know, WWE? No, I don't think anyone's ever. You know, that's a huge corporation. That's a corporate entity that brings in, that, you know, is relying on, you know, sponsor deals and all other sorts of aspects of wrestling, and aren't just relying on the gate, aren't just relying on pay-per-view sales or DVD sales or any of those things, and even, you know, to such a degree that it's mind-boggling. I would recommend, I'm sure most of you probably already seen it, the Paul Heyman interview that Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer did, that they posted on YouTube, that was just listening to Paul Heyman talk about everything that was basically wrong with TNA in a very short amount of time was very eye-opening, and a lot of what he said was true. But, and anyone that says, you know, that, oh, well, you know, mainstream fans won't go for whatever, for indie wrestling. The thing is, indie wrestling today is usually kind of where the forefront and where a lot of the innovation is coming from. It used to be in Japan, but it's not really in Japan anymore. And so now, you know, the you know, TNA, the mainstream stuff, is relying more on the innovation from the indie wrestling. Good and bad, and that's good and bad. Much the same way that ECW is responsible for the Attitude Era. And anyone that has read pretty much anything that has ever been written about the Attitude Era knows that the Attitude Era basically was both sides. WCW stole ideas from ECW, and WWE stole stuff from ECW. So right there is one example. The other example is this. You know, last year, when WrestleMania came to Houston, and all, you know, and we had, and Ring of Honor came to Houston, MB came to Houston, never seen a Ring of Honor show. Really wasn't a Ring of Honor fan. And Bill and Doug, who live in Houston, decided that they were going to go to the Ring of Honor show, because they were like, hey, we'll give them a shot. We'll go out there. MB became a Ring of Honor fan, and Bill and Doug both became, well, more Bill, but and Doug to a degree became Ring of Honor fans, because they went to those shows. Those are 3 mainstream fans that went to a show and loved it. This year, when we went to Phoenix, Kristen and Dee, Black Cat Feline, they both went to the Ring of Honor show, one of the Ring of Honor shows, and so did Johnny Thunder. And I believe all 3 of them, I'm not too sure about Johnny Thunder, but I believe all 3 of them loved the show that they went to and thought it was a great experience. And Dee and Kristen in particular would be considered mainstream fans, and they liked it. I have never heard of a mainstream fan going to a Ring of Honor show and not enjoying themselves. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's people that go to and, this isn't for me, and that's fine and dandy. But, you know, I find it funny, particularly when I know for a fact that SPINNERNET has had an opportunity to go to Ring of Honor shows and has never gone. And I do find that kind of funny that here, it feels like he's talking about himself when he's talking about this. I mean, he's talking about himself. Just say he's talking about himself. Don't try to say that he's speaking for all mainstream fans, when I have had plenty of people who never watched anything but mainstream wrestling and watched a Ring of Honor show or watched a PWG or watched something and fell in love with it and started following the indies or started following Japan or started following whatever. We all at one point were mainstream fans. That's how we got, Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon brought an entire generation to the wrestling table. Okay? Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat, for a lot of us, kept us at that table. And then when we thought we were finally said, this is the food's getting bad, we started to get up from the table. Here came Paul Heyman to say, oh no, here, I'm going to give you more of the stuff you want. I'm going to give you something different and you're going to like it. And we all sat back down. And so I've never believed this notion that mainstream fans won't like indie wrestling, because we were all mainstream fans at one point. Some of us are still mainstream fans, and so there you go. Let's see. Let's see. What was that? How did you... Oh, that's just what I talked about. So we can skip that one. So here's a question. So why don't you tell us why people wouldn't like indie wrestling? All you said in this video, all SPINNERNET said was, mainstream fans won't like indie wrestling. Well, why won't they? Is it the production values? Is it the guys are too small? Is it the type of wrestling? Is it the fact that, some of the guys are a little too spot happy? What are the reasons why you don't think mainstream fans wouldn't like the show? Why didn't you tell us instead of just rambling about and saying, I know for a fact that mainstream fans wouldn't like this. Why? Because you don't like it? I'm curious. I'm wondering. Then he went off about why some of us, and I really felt like he was talking about me, but he probably wasn't just talking about me. He was probably talking about kind of the clones of me. And I don't mean that in a regal sort of sense. I just mean that there are a lot of people that copy what I do or have done. And about the fact that talk about WWE, talk about TNA, talk about Ring of Honor, and the fact that they hate TNA and they hate WWE, but they talk about Ring of Honor and they champion Ring of Honor. Why is that? And he talked about the fact that, WWE and TNA get more views. They do get more views. There's no question about that. They have a bigger audience. And the reason why I talk about WWE, don't talk about TNA anymore. Why do I talk about WWE is because that's the biggest audience. And if I can get the biggest audience I can, and then I can talk about Ring of Honor, maybe I can get more and more people to check out Ring of Honor. That's always been my goal since I personally came on here, was to get people to watch Ring of Honor. Since the very first, when I started on here, what did I talk about when I talked about Bill and Doug? I didn't talk about WWE that much. I talked about the fact that TNA was not better than even Ring of Honor, and that people that were sick of WWE and weren't giving Ring of Honor a chance needed to give Ring of Honor a chance. That's what I talked about. That's what I preached. And that was the stuff I brought up about, and did I defend WWE? Yes, I defended WWE when they did good. I defended TNA when they've done stuff that I liked. But it's because I like wrestling. Now, I like Ring of Honor more. I've always agreed that I've never discounted that I'm a big fan of Ring of Honor. I've never hidden the fact that I'm a huge fan of Ring of Honor. I wouldn't do, I wouldn't pimp Ring of Honor the way I did if I wasn't a huge fan of Ring of Honor. But yes, do I use the views and the subscribers that I get from WWE reviews and views and all of that to help Ring of Honor videos? Of course I do. And I think anyone that doesn't is kind of fooling themselves. I'm sure there's people that don't, and more power to them. I don't myself. But hey, so it's not that big of a deal. He also brought up the fact that he wanted to know why people didn't talk about storylines and people didn't talk about who the wrestlers were when they did these reviews of DVDs. I can tell you, I could probably do that because I can go for as long as I want. I've gone for as long as I want on this video. I don't like giving out necessary spoilers on matches. Usually I do try to give a short synopsis. I already talked about the fact that usually the announcers do a pretty good job of explaining what the storyline and whatnot are. on the DVDs. And if there is one, sometimes there's that one. And all of those sort of things. But for most people, they only have 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, it's hard to talk about the match, and then, it's hard to talk about, let's say, 8 to 10 matches on a 10-minute video, and talk about everything you want to talk about, and then also talk about the storylines and all of this other stuff. That's a very hard thing to do. So I think that might be the reason. And the stuff is easy to follow, particularly if you follow Ring of Honor, because you've got the TV show on YouTube. You've also, they put up the video wires. Chikara puts up the podcast Go-Go, which allows you to follow stuff pretty easy and allows you to, the storylines aren't so complex. Well, Chikara's are to a degree, but the storylines are never so complex that you have to watch every show. And that's always been a misconception I've never got. That I never understand why people have that you have to watch every show. You don't have to watch every show. You have to watch some of the major shows. But usually, if you go to the websites and you even go to the forums or whatnot, you'll kind of understand what's going on. And maybe it takes a little bit more effort to follow what's going on, but I think it's worth it myself. I just really wonder where he came off with this. This indie fan. Let's just go after all the indie fanboys. Because if they're putting on the better wrestling, and if the reason why most of the people on here on YouTube, I would say 90% of the people that come on YouTube to watch wrestling videos are simply looking for good wrestling and are diehard wrestling fans, then I would imagine that, particularly between Chikara and ROH, and maybe you could throw PWG in there too, that one of those three promotions would probably give them something that they would like if they don't feel like TNA or WWE is giving them what they want. So I don't understand why he finds it so offensive that people would try to talk about these promotions, because we all like what we like. This isn't like Jim and I talking about, well, why do people talk about indie wrestling but they don't talk about 80s and 90s and the NWA and all this sort of stuff, which I think is a valid point. This is just him coming on here and basically talking about and saying, well, I'm going to try to sway everybody's opinion. This is how I feel about it. It's like I want to sway everyone's opinion so that they'll talk about what I want to talk about and not talk about the stuff that I don't want to talk about. Well, then don't talk about it. If you don't want to talk about Ring of Honor, don't talk about Ring of Honor. You want to talk about PW, don't talk about PW. If you're getting emails asking people why you don't review this stuff, say, that's not my thing. I don't want to review it. Fine. So be it. Unless you're unless you're the one that's so worried about views and subscribers that you feel the need, okay, you feel the need to jump out and say, and to defend yourself and say, okay, I'm going to make this video and then I'm going to be done with it and people will know how I feel and maybe people will stop sending me these emails. Okay, you couldn't just come out and say, I don't like it. And stop trying to talk for other people. This, that, and the other. I understand some people don't like indie wrestling. It's not, like I said, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you don't, at least come on and say why. And if people disagree with you, guess what? Be prepared to defend yourself, because you threw your opinion out there, and people are going to let you know how they feel. That's part of being on here. That's part of the deal. I do wish he had done this video I wish he waited 2 months to do this video. Really, I do. That would have been fun. That would have been really fun. I won't say why it would have been fun, but that would have been glorious. But, anyways, I've rambled for a long time. So, with that, and I'm sure the video is probably frozen a few times, I guess I'm out. I guess that's all I had to say. I'm sure more people will say stuff. Like I said, I'll try to do this as a response. We'll see how it goes. But that's just kind of how I felt. There's a lot of other things he said that I'm sure I forgot and skipped over or whatever. But he said a lot of stuff. It was pretty amazing, the stuff that he said. It's amazing that Bill and Doug have kind of seen the light, and now SPINNERNET is trying to fight the good fight. you know, of I'm not going to talk about Ring of Honor or PWG or Shikara or anything else. And, you know, heaven forbid someone ask him to, you know, actually watch a, you know, Kaiju Big Battle DVD. Wouldn't that be fun? For those of you that know what that is, wouldn't that be glorious? You know, no, I don't think anyone's ever done one of those reviews. I don't think anyone ever has, and that'd be something, wouldn't it? Well, with that, I'm out. Have a good one. Oh, and one last little bit of information. If you're going to imply that there are elitists here on YouTube, then by all means, call them out. By all means, say why you think they're elitists. By all means, explain to the thousands why you think this. And don't hide behind, oh, I'm not going to cause drama, because guess what? The elitist pricks don't really give a shit. Because usually what the elitist pricks about isn't about indie wrestling. It's usually about people getting facts wrong, misconceptions, and things that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Wonder who that could be.